Good morning. Welcome to the Corporation of Towns of Puslinch, March 23rd, 2022 council meeting. It's virtual by electronic means. I'd like to call it to order. Next order of business is the roll call. Councillor Goyda.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
And I, John Sapoulis, I'm present as well. Let's take a moment of reflection for about 15-20 seconds. Okay, thank you. I apologize for the late start to the meeting. One of our councilors is filling in for the mayor's had a technical glitch, so he'll hopefully join us a bit later on in the meeting. So we'll move on to the confirmation agenda. Ms. White-Fox, do you have a resolution?
The council approves the March 23rd, 2022 agenda as circulated, and that council approves the addition to the agenda as follows. Item 6.1.4, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff regarding the March 23rd, 2022 council agenda items.
Good, thank you. Do I have a mover? Really, second by Councillor Goyda. All in favor? Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. With this late start, I think we'll move directly into, sorry, I guess we should do the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and nature thereof?
No.
No, great, thank you. Let's move into the delegation. I believe we have Ms. Julie Martin who would like to speak. Ms. White-Fox, would you call her over, please?
Hello.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. So please go ahead, start with your presentation.
Am I able to share my screen?
Ms.
I
White-Fox?
have your presentation here for you. I can certainly share it. And if you just wanted to let me know when to flip to the next slide, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Julie Martin Jansen, and I'm actually the new Advocate Resource Counselor for Hospice Wellington. It's a role that they just started, and I'll talk a little bit more about what my role is as far as in the rural areas. But I wanted to just sort of talk a little bit about what Hospice Wellington is. And when people first hear the word hospice, most people think that that's the place you go to die, and that's all we do. But I'm here and hopefully today to change your perspective about what hospice does do for the community and for anyone in Wellington County. Okay, next slide. So who do we support? We're all about supporting people that are living with a life-limiting illness or people who are actively dying. So people who are palliative, which palliative is if they have that diagnosis of life-limiting illness. It could be Alzheimer's, dementia, COPD, cancer. Any of those are life-limiting illnesses, and it depends on the trajectory of that illness. But we normally support anyone who's palliative in the last 18 months of their life, and we try to get in there earlier to help them with supports and resources. And sometimes it's more that they're coming to our residence in the last 3 months of their life. But we don't just offer supports for the people who are dying, we offer supports for their circle of care. So anyone who is a caregiver in the community, for someone they love, for a family friend, anybody who is caring for somebody and in that role of that they're not being paid to care for people, that they've just kind of got that nice job or offered to do that job to care for their neighbors, for their parents, for their children, whoever it is that they're caring for. And it's also for anyone that lives in Guelph, Wellington County that are looking for bereavement supports or are grieving, and we offer supports for them as well. So it's not just for everybody who lives in Wellington County, it's also for anyone who has been supported by our 10-bed resident facility, because people come from all over to our hospice facility, and they could be from Elmira or Hamilton or anywhere, depending on how they've gotten there. Okay, next slide. So our goals of palliative care are, palliative care is that approach to care that we want to improve that quality of life for the people that are actively dying or dying, and their families that are facing that life-limiting illness. So we want to provide comfort and care. We use a team approach to address the needs of that person and their families. And I can't stress enough that it's in the whole circle of care for that one person. We do try to treat the symptoms of the illness or the disease, any side effects, any psychosocial or spiritual problems that they may be having, or any issues that they need help with or resources. So we do believe that the end of life deserves as much beauty and care as the beginning of life. And we're here to support anyone and their loved ones through that journey. Next slide. So when we say we offer supports to palliative clients, people go, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, we have a palliative day program at our facility in Guelph in the community level, which is the below part of the residence. And that runs every week. And it's for people who have that illness or that diagnosis. And they come every week. It's a 3-hour program. They do they have like maybe a little education piece, but it's a social time to be with other people who have had that illness diagnosis. And they get a nice lunch from the ladies upstairs. And then they have some sort of either music therapy or art therapy, or we have our wellness program come in to help support them. We also offer one-on-one supports for somebody who is palliative, and that can range from anywhere from phone supports to having our wonderful volunteers call and just check in with them. It's a wellness check. Or they can go into the home. Yay, we're finally allowed to go back into the homes as of April 4th, I believe. So we can get our volunteers back out there to help support people in their homes so they can provide, companionship, respite for the caregiver. They can help the person tell their story or write their story out or write letters to their loved ones, or even talk to them about how to have conversations with their family or with the healthcare teams if they need to have that, and how to work through that anticipatory grief. We offer wellness supports, and we do also have end of life vigil that we are in. I believe 8 of the long-term care homes that are in Wellington County. And we believe that no one should ever die alone. And the reason why we have this is that sometimes families can't be there, or somebody who is dying in the last 48 or 24 to 48 hours of their life, and they don't have anybody, and the staff obviously don't have the time to always sit there with the person. So we try to offer that support as best we can to anyone that needs it in a long-term care home. Okay, next slide. So for the caregivers, what we try to offer, or what we do offer, is we do have group support. So that is in person. We have at the community level in Guelph, we have every other Tuesday, they do a support group. And then we have one-on-one phone support, or again, when our volunteers are able to go back in the homes, they can help with some respite, so the volunteer could either get some sleep or go out and do gardening or whatever they have or want or need to do, so that they know somebody is there with their loved one. We do help them with, if they want to, we don't write it for them and we can't be a witness, but we are there to give them the resources to do an advanced care plan, or if they have questions about financial or legal worries, we can help direct them where to go or where to get that support. And then any supports or resources that they need to help with their emotions and coping through and a lot of anticipatory grief. And the thing with caregivers we find is that they never want to take time for themselves to get any of the support. So this has been a bit of a struggle to do a group because it's an 8-week, the ones that we do in the community, but I think they find it hard to find the time to come and take time for themselves. So we're really trying to promote that we really need to offer some wellness and supports for the caregivers because they need to care for themselves as well. Next slide. So for our bereaved or people who are grieving, we offer grief education and support workshops. We do group sessions. We have a spousal loss group. We have one-on-one support groups that some people don't want to be in a group, so you can have a phone call support. We offer wellness supports. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we have a morning walking group that we have that's out of the Royal Distributing Center in Guelph. I think that's what it's called, but and they have a lovely group that goes and are part of that. We also offer different workshops that are about coping through the holidays. Right now, our bereavement coordinator is running a new writing group that we're trying, and also she's partnered with a holistic group so that they're doing some of that. Next slide. So the wellness stuff that I talked about, that it goes with any palliative caregiver or the bereaved, they can access any of our wellness supports at any time. So we have peaceful yoga, but I believe unfortunately that's on hold right now. We do Reiki, therapeutic touch. We have a Well on Your Way. It's a Sparks Connect resource platform that has recorded meditations, mindfulness, and self-compassion practices. We update that all the time, and you can go on anytime, and that's the nice thing for caregivers or anybody. It doesn't have to be set times. You can go on our Sparks Connect at any time. So 3 o'clock in the morning if you're not sleeping, or if you're a caregiver and you're up, then you can go on it when you have that time to spend for yourself. We just started a new caregiver circle on this platform, and it has a ton of resources to share for the caregivers. And there's also meditation, emotional support, and a lot of things like that. So next. So my role then as the advocate resource person is strictly actually just all of Wellington County. So in that nice map there with all the colors, I'm everywhere but the blue city of Guelph. So I travel quite a bit, which is awesome. But my role basically is to get out into the rural communities, to the towns and the townships, to find out what resources are already out there, and then to look at what can Hospice Wellington bring out there. So we're looking at some different unique services and supports, like a book club, so partnering with the libraries. We're partnering with the Alzheimer's Society to offer some transitional care. So when somebody at the Alzheimer's Society dies, Alzheimer's Society doesn't have any bereavement support. Their just services are done. So we're transitioning with them to help them with the bereavement supports after they've lost somebody. So those are the kind of unique things we're trying to do out in the community, as well as try to promote some group supports. Right now, that's not kind of going over so well. I've tried a couple and we don't get a lot of response. We've had a couple people in a virtual group, a couple in a bereavement support group. So we're trying to grow that. And I'm sure once things open up more and people are feeling more comfortable going out in the community and have some time in the fall, maybe we'll be able to try it again. So next slide. So how my job came about is this lovely couple here, Oscar and Clara Bookbinder. They both passed away at Hospice Wellington, and they actually bequested their part of their estate to Hospice Wellington, specifically to get support out into the rural Wellington County. What they did when they got the money was they put together a group of people not just from hospice, but in the community. So different family health teams, nurses, different people in the community to look at where the gaps were in the community and find out, or in the rural areas, and find out what do we need to do or how can we bring supports out there. So they did do their research, which was awesome because that was kind of done. But when I started, my role was basically, okay, well, get out there and see what you can do. I just wrote my own job description, and I feel my job is an ever-changing role because not every area or every town or township wants the same things. They might be looking for bereavement support over here, whereas they're looking for more caregiver support in this area, or the family health teams are needing some palliative support or extra support on with the social workers. Next slide. So the things that we want to do out in the rural community is develop those relationships and make sure that we can sustain them. So this is a 3-year project or pilot project that they got the money for. The goal is to continue on and carry on once we have established all these partnerships in the community, and hopefully having regular programs that we are setting up and getting going, which is what my role actually is doing. And partnering with some of the seniors groups, and like I said, the library, to do maybe a book club or a movie club and talk about it. All that it is all about death and dying and support for the circle. So again, providing that exceptional care to the palliative caregiver and bereavement people in Wellington County. So every year or every 3 months, we put out our At a Glance, which is our newsletter that tells you what supports are in for that quarter. So from April till June, it'll give you what programs we offer for palliative, for bereavement, and for caregivers, and what our wellness supports are at that time. So it could change every most of the stuff stays the same, but every 3 months we might add a different program or add a different aspect to what's already in place. Okay, next slide. So we are a registered charity, and all of our programs and services are available at no cost to anyone in Wellington County. And again, people who have used and were supported through our residents. But how we get that is because we have a generous community that donates money to Hospice Wellington, and it's from donations from estates, from fundraising. So we do a lot of that. We just had our handbags for hospice, which went over really well. And the ministry gives us about, it's lower now this year, about 30 some odd %. So over 60% of our funding comes from donations, which is amazing that we are doing so well. And so what did I want to, so the other thing that I wanted to just mention is that we actually just put together a booklet, and I don't know if you can see this. So this is our new little booklet. It's called A Guide for End of Life Planning and Support. And in that booklet, we just ordered 1,500 copies. They're free. We're giving them out everywhere. So if anybody wants some of these booklets, and they're a very plain language, simple guide to help people who have either been given a diagnosis, a life-limiting diagnosis, to look at, okay, well, how do I make sure I know what's happening to me, and how do I talk to the doctors? How do I talk to my family and friends? What do I need to have in place? Do I have advanced care planning? Do I have a will? Where is it kept? So it's kind of like a fill in the blank kind of information little booklet. And it's not just for people who are, have that diagnosis. It's for people now to, I always call it be prepared just in case booklet. So hopefully it'll help people to know that, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I needed to have this, or I didn't know they needed that for my funeral cost or for anything like that. So there's a lot of really good information in there for caregivers, for what to expect at the last days of life, and then information about funeral costs. And then there's a little back page with some resources and some notes on there. Okay, so next slide, last slide. So again, with support and involvement from everyone in the community, we can help hospice grow in the rural communities, especially. And if you have anything that you'd like to offer or share, or an idea for how to bring supports into the rural communities, we'd love to hear from you. There's an information, there's our website, and then there's an information where you can send information to, email and phone number. And then my contact information is also on there. So if anybody, because I don't have an office, I have a driving car office. I have a lending library in my car. I have resources in my car. But my phone number is a cell phone that always is with me. And if anybody has any questions or any thing you want to share, please feel free to share that. I have another 2 years and 2 months to get these supports out into the community. And I would love to hear from you. And thank you again so much for the opportunity to come on and talk about Hospice Wellington and how we're trying to grow out into the rural communities.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to turn it over to the rest of council to see if they have any questions of you. So Councilor, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm glad you presented, because as you said, I think probably a lot of people have this idea that palliative care is just for those who are ill, but I was not aware that you had so many supports available for both caregivers and for the loved ones of the caregivers. So that's really good to know that. And it's also great to hear that there's now a dedicated role to get those supports and programs out into the rural areas. So thank you for taking that role on, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Yeah, and another point I just want to make too is that for our bereavement supports, it's for anybody in Wellington County, and your family member or your loved one or friend doesn't have to have died in Wellington County. If it's your mother who lives in Toronto or even in BC or somewhere like that, if you live in Wellington County, we will support you, and that's our big thing is we will support everyone that lives in Wellington County and those that were supported in the residence. So that's really good.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Bailey. Questions?
I just had one question. Thank you very much for coming today. Again, I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions that, you know, we aren't aware of, and it sounds like you're really trying hard to get out into the community, and hopefully more and more people will, you know, at least be aware that services are there if they need them, and know about it before they need it, you know, so that it's not in the moment confusion is kind of how I'm seeing it. I just wanted a clarification on the last slide. You had all the programs are free of charge, can be accessed to our clients, but then you said it was available to everybody. So I'm just not clear on that.
So if you refer yourself or a doctor, you're a client. So we call everybody in Wellington County our clients. So if anybody wants to be referred or refer yourself, because you can refer yourself for caregiver and palliative or a bereavement, and for palliative, but with palliative, you usually have to have that doctor's diagnosis, which we do it case by case, and we don't rarely turn anybody away. And I mean, we've had people call 5 years later after they've lost a loved one and are struggling, and it's maybe hitting them 5 years later. We'll still support you because grief never ends. So there's always that time that if you need those supports, we are here to help you.
Right. And I just had a question too. You mentioned your At a Glance newsletter. What platform is that on? Is that paper copy or is it digital or?
Yeah, I can send it to you if you'd like. I can have that on your email. We have both. We have the paper copies that we have at our community level and resident level that we give out. Normally what I do and what all the staff do is we have our community engagement plan, and then we send it out electronically to everyone that's in our contact list. So if you want them electronically, I'm more than happy to send them to you. I can also send you our guide in a PDF form, but I can bring you books if anybody wants a bunch of books, or if you want any for yourself, I'm more than happy to deliver, because I am driving out there anyway, so.
Right. Well, maybe once the township office opens, it'd be good to have
Yeah.
you there. So thanks
Yeah,
very much
sure.
for coming.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you want, I think Glenn and Jeff have my email. If anybody wants to email me for a copy of At a Glance, I'm more than happy, or I can send it to both of them and they can distribute it for everybody.
Great. Thanks very much.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. See, Councillor Bulmer has joined us. Councillor, have questions of the presenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for that presentation. I'm so glad I was able to overcome the technical gremlins and able to be able to hear your presentation. You know, a friend of mine recently died, and longtime friend and mentor of mine, and he and his family benefited from the services at your hospice. And it was still during the COVID, and I was so pleased to be able to visit him there, and so impressed by what you did. And at the same time, today in your presentation, I'm involved in another organization that's centered in Guelph, or located in Guelph, that does a lot of its work as outreach into the county. And it really spoke to me what you're talking about, the diversity of the communities across the county and the enormity of the geographic area you have to cover. It's a big task, and I appreciate you taking it on. And I really appreciate that you recognize the diversity out there. The small towns and the rural areas maybe are different from some of the larger urban centers out there in Elora and Fergus, but they all matter. And I'm glad that you identified that you're getting to all the corners. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions. I was wondering if Mr. Swindiger could, or Ms. Whitefox, could liaise with you to link your website to our township media, as well as get some pamphlets available.
Absolutely. We'll definitely get something set up.
Great. Thank you very much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for the presentation. Okay, so Ms. Whitefox, have a resolution.
The council receives the delegation by Julie Martin regarding the Hospice Wellington for information.
Great, do I have a mover? Councillor Bailey, second, Councillor Goyda. All in favor? Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Bowman.
In favor.
Great, so I'd like to turn the meeting back over to Councillor Bulmer. So we've starting back to the consent agenda, and the order of business is Councillor Goyda go first, I would go second, and Councillor Bailey would go third.
Well, that's very kind of you, Councillor Sapoulis, but it sounds like you have things well in hand. So thank you very much for stepping in at the last moment there. But if I will take it, I'll take it from here if you like.
Sure, absolutely.
So the next item of our agenda is the consent agenda. Ms. Hoyt-Fox, do we have a resolution to accept the consent agenda items?
We do, that the consent agenda items listed for the March 23rd, 2022 council meeting be received for information.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover and a seconder so we can discuss the consent agenda items?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Goyda. Okay, Councillor Goyda, any items you'd like to discuss, pull from the items?
I do not.
Councillor Sapoulis?
No, I do not.
Okay, and Councillor Bailey?
I just wanted to discuss briefly 6.25, the Upper Grand District School Board reducing school board carbon footprints.
Okay, thank you. That's 625, you said?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to pull 627 if I could, Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk.
Certainly, I've just amended that resolution just to exclude items 6.25 and 6.27 and the rest to be received for information.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor?
and Councillor Bailey?
Yep, in favor.
I'm in favor as well, so that's passed. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Bailey, up or over to you. I think you wanted to discuss item 625.
Thank you. Yeah. Just when I read this, it made me wonder if Karen Chisholm at the Climate Change Committee in Wellington County had, been aware of this. So I actually forwarded it on and had a little email conversation with her about it. And she had not known about, this letter from the Upper Grandis School Board. And she was, happy to know that this was being done and it was, becoming a goal. And she said she would also be circulating it as well. And it kind of made me see this letter as the letter was going like up to the bigger, powers that be. And I'm wondering, where or how we can help facilitate coming down to sort of the community or what we can do to help. So I guess that was my question. I just wondered if anyone on council had any thoughts or maybe how we can be helping with this topic.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting thoughts. So Councillor Goida, any thoughts?
I wonder if perhaps, thank you, Councillor Bailey, for bringing that up, and thank you for reaching out to the county, but maybe the best option would be to ask I'm not sure who this letter is written by, Linda Basutti, I'm not sure how to say that name, maybe to come to council and present as to, how we might be able to help and support the initiative.
Any thoughts on that, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I don't know if that, I don't know that that's an option for sure. I just kind of wondered, it just looked like there was a need for school boards in Wellington County to kind of connect further on this. So I don't know if it was something we can just support this letter and formally forward it on to the community at Wellington, or the committee at Wellington County, if that's enough, or if me just reaching out was enough.
Okay.
I didn't know if there was any guidance from staff, to know how to help with the maybe just helping to grow the communication on this.
And Councillor Sapoulis, anything to add?
Yeah, I would suggest that we forward it on to the appropriate people at the county and say we were received of this, and would be appreciative if you could connect with this individual to help them out.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting, as you talked about this, Councillor Bailey, it reminded me of a project that I was involved in early on with the County Accessibility Advisory Committee, where it was the City of Guelph, the County of Wellington, school boards, and I believe it was Homewood Health, all worked together to develop some accessibility standards for so that it was a county-wide thing. We also have long-standing experience with a lot of these same groups working together in purchasing, and I wonder if there's maybe an opportunity here when we send this on to the county to see the climate change issue in the same way. That are there opportunities to keep channels of communication open when we're having the discussions, or to have a group of people that connect periodically to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction? Does that sort of fit with what you're thinking, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like just trying to help bring people together that are all going to, achieve a similar goal. Like, I agree that I think she wrote in the letter that, that our communities expect school institutions to visibly do their part. And we want to just show that, we're supporting that. We're also doing it in our community. So I like that idea of connecting.
So Councillor Sapoulis, would that fit in with your suggestion of writing to the county, and maybe could we include something about reaching out to other potential partners so we're all working on the same direction as Councillor Bailey is suggesting?
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect.
So would you like to make that motion?
Certainly, I guess if that would, I guess, be helpful, maybe Councillor Bailey, would you like to help Councillor Sapoulis craft a motion to that effect?
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean,
Well, move that the correspondence be forwarded to the County of Wellington, and that they seek other like-minded organizations to facilitate bringing this more visibly out to the community.
Councillor Bailey, that work for you?
That works for me. Yep.
I'd like to second that.
I will second it.
All right. Councillor Goida,
I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
Favor, appreciate that.
I'm in favor as well. Good work, Councillor Bailey. Okay, item 627 regarding, that's from Wasaga Beach regarding, I think it was reorganization of fire departments in their region. Is that correct, Madam Chair, Madam CAO? No, sorry, that error does not come with a pay raise. Madam Clerk.
Yeah, 627 is Town of Wasaga Beach, and it's regarding the fire services.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pull this to have a brief discussion, since we are somewhat in flux as well. We have an interim fire chief. We've had a lot of discussions about satellite stations, not satellite stations, getting the station off of the EDR, getting the EDR away from the fire hall. And I wondered if staff would be able to comment on whether there's anything in this report that we could learn from as we go through this process, not exact same process, but a similar process ourselves.
I'll defer to Chief Big Rig. He's on the call as well. Perhaps he could comment. He's better versed in this than I am.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councillor. Good morning, Council. My response to your inquiry, Councillor Bomer, is that the study in Simcoe County was an attempt at effectiveness and efficiency reviews of the fire services in Simcoe County. I did not see, and I am not aware from my peers in the county, that there is anything arising out of that particular county study that would assist us in the delivery of public fire protection in the township of Puslinch, save and except the part that talks about fire protection agreements and automatic aid, which are both items that I discussed in a previous report about entering into additional agreements with the city of Guelph and the city of Cambridge. That would assist us in terms of the other measures that they were trying to work through in Simcoe County. I believe that the consultant had challenges comparing data from different municipalities to get them where they wanted to be in terms of a more fulsome report. And I say that with all due respect. I did discuss this matter with the CAO, and I can assure you that the data that we collect is data that we need so that we can provide you with accurate and timely reports. But it is also the data that the fire marshal requires from us from a statutory basis. So any other data that had to be collected would be outside what we need as a municipality or what the fire marshal needs for standard incident reports. I can tell you in the Simcoe County report, there was an attempt on the part of a couple of municipalities to hold the construction of additional fire stations in hopes that they may better be co-located to support more than one municipality. But they either are not there yet or they are not going to engage on that particular part of the project at this time. That would be my submission on this particular subject right now.
Okay, thanks so much. I don't like to let these things pass by if there's something we can glean from them for ourselves. So thank you very much. Okay, no action required on that. I guess we're on to item number 8 then on the agenda.
Should we just, if I could interrupt, Mr. Chair, if we could just receive that item for information then as well?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have a motion to accept that item for as information?
It's to receive the consent agenda item 627 for the March 23rd council meeting for information.
Thank you very much. Do I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Poulos, and a seconder.
Consent.
Sorry.
Was that Councillor Bailey?
I think I beat her to the punch.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Sepoulis,
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. Thank you. All right, now we can move to item 8 regarding public information meetings. I believe we have 2 items tonight at 7 p.m. I will endeavor to be there well in advance. We have item number, let's see, zoning amendment D14/HUT regarding, I think that has to do with a site-specific rezoning. And then we have a sort of a housekeeping amendment for the zoning bylaw regarding home industries. And they start at 7 p.m. tonight. And I believe the agenda is on the township website if anybody wants to get a copy of that before the meeting. Okay, number 9 of staff reports. Puslinch Fire and Rescue Services. We have a report from Chief Big Rig here regarding mandatory training and certification. Chief Big Rig?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. I was asked to prepare this report arising out of an effort by the province to bring back what they are calling fire service modernization, but it's actually a mandatory training and certification and level of service requirement that will be coming in a new Ontario regulation. I would expect in the next 1 to 6 weeks. Arising out of this report, I'm asking that council receive the report and approve our current level of training with OFMEM, that's the Office of the Fire Marshal, certification as the minimum acceptable level of training for Puslinch firefighters. The council receives this report and directs the CAO to work with the permanent fire chief to bring the level of emergency response identified in the establishing and regulating bylaw into alignment with the current level of firefighter training, and that council received that report by September 30th. And arising out of any discussions here today, that the clerk inform the fire marshal that the municipality is in general support of the fire service modernization, training, certification, and level of service proposed by the office, subject to any concerns raised by council or arising out of discussion today. I can tell you that the current act that we work under came into force in 1997. And although the act allowed for the province to set minimum standards for firefighter training and certification, it actually did not. And we relied on the requirements of the Occupational Health and Safety Act for our minimum training and certification. The government of Ontario in 2018 attempted to promulgate an Ontario regulation to impose training and certification on the fire service that at the time was not well received by the fire service, the trade unions, AMO, and Roma. Since that time, the OFM has worked with the stakeholders to come back with another certification and training process that more better meets the needs of the fire service and certainly meets the needs of Puslinch firefighters. I should make very clear that at the present time, all of our active firefighters are trained and certified or grandfathered for all levels of firefighting and fire apparatus functions carried out on the fire ground. So this includes particularly standards NFPA 1001, firefighter 1 and 2, NFPA 1002, apparatus officer, and also the acquisition of a Class DZ driver's license in the second year. We have a number of firefighters that are trained as incident safety officers and a number of company officers that are trained and certified to NFPA 1021. So those are the industrial standards and best practices that most fire departments in Ontario were working to since the government attempted to implement a previous regulation. So
Thank you.
I think that I'll stop there. There are some other comments. What I want to assure council is that people who are currently trained and certified do not have to go back and do anything. I can tell you that the previous fire chief and deputy chief Churchill have ensured that this department has impeccable records, and we stand the test of any Ministry of Labor inspection or investigation with respect to training of firefighters.
Thank you. That's very important information because we're, you know, in any situation, we're putting them at risk, but when they're out in the 401, when they're in a fire situation, it's even more imperative that they're aware of what they're doing and aware how to do it safely. So thank you. Do I have a motion to put this item on the council's table?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So it's the motion is based on the recommendation in the staff report. So it is that council receives report FIR 2022-001 Ontario Fire Services Modernization Mandatory Training and Certification with OFEM certification as the minimum acceptable level of training for Puslinch firefighters, and that council direct the CAO to work with the permanent fire chief to bring the level of emergency response identified in the Township of Puslinch bylaw 18-0/2019, into alignment with the current approval level of firefighter training, and that council receive the report on this matter by September 30th, 2022. And further, that the clerk notify the fire marshal that the municipality is in general support of Ontario Fire Service Modernization Mandatory Training and Certification and level of service proposed by the Office of the Fire Marshal, subject to any concerns raised by council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, I'm just looking for a mover and a seconder to put this on the table. We can ask questions as we go around, if that's all right with everyone. Do I have a mover?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Spoulis. A seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Goida. All right, Councillor Goida, any questions on this matter?
Just briefly, I just wanted to thank Chief Bigrig for putting this together and making us aware of the requirements. I did just spend a little bit of time trying to do some research and just try to understand this a little bit better. And I had come across some concerns from some municipalities who were expressing some concern with potential increased costs, and also some of them spoke to the ability to be able to continually to recruit successfully once the changes were implemented. But when I read through this report, I was pleased to read that for the Township of Puslinch specifically, that there isn't any anticipated financial implications, and that the firefighters are already engaged in the training and certification process. So when I read this, it tells me that there isn't a radical change required here from our fire department. But I was just wondering if Chief Bigrig could just briefly touch on how the current training and certification align with what is being proposed. Is it mainly just speeding up the process of the training that's already in place? Because it sounds like we already have the requirements already put, like it's already happening. So I'm just wondering if you could touch on that for a minute.
Certainly, Councillor. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. It's more of the same. Many fire departments in the province moved to this training and certification model when the government first put their intentions forward in 2018. And that's when the Township of Puslinch made the switch. It's better for us and it's better for the firefighters if they're trained and certified. And certainly from a risk management standpoint, the Ministry of Labor can't come back and tell us that we're not well trained if the firefighters have been trained and certified by the province that the Ministry of Labor works for, to be quite blunt with you. So with respect to basic firefighting functions, that part is already underway. The one caveat is that when the technical rescue curriculum is released by the province, or when they provide us with appropriate reference material, there are going to be gaps in our training with respect to auto extrication, and there are going to be gaps in our training, I'm sure, with water and ice rescue, just as times have changed. It's not through any fault of the people who are doing the training or the people that are delivering the service. But we don't expect to even see that curriculum until 2024. And I believe the latest we have to certify is 2028. So we're not going to retrain everybody in auto extrication. we'll be providing the training in the gaps that we identify so that they can be successful in the certification. I know I've had discussion with a number of the firefighters and yourself. Nobody has to try to relearn what they already do. This is strictly a gap analysis, complete the training, complete the job performance requirements, do the practical and theoretical testing, and that part of it is almost identical to how we do firefighter training and testing today.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Boomer. Yes, Chief Bigrig, yeah, a few questions. You indicate that our recently recruited firefighters will not be able to respond to emergency incidents. How many are there, do we have in that particular situation?
Currently have 32, I'm sorry, 32 active firefighters trained, certified, or grandfathered, ready to go out the door. There are 10 recruits in training now, and I expect that they will be, the training will be completed, I would expect by the end of June, early July. We will try to get the certification testing done promptly after that. That has to be scheduled ahead of time anyway. I expect that 7 or 8 of those people will pass their testing very quickly. I would count on 2 or 3 people needing some remedial help, and it may take another month or 2 for them to be prepared to go out the door. But we have 10 recruits in training, and the numbers I gave you are not based on any personal knowledge of the recruits. It's just based on the balance of possibility and probability.
Okay, getting down to the NFPA 1006 technical rescue. We do that currently, and you were mentioning to Councilor Gorda that we have some gaps. Do we know the gaps that we have, or is it something that's going to be just identified in the training program when it comes in?
No, in fact, we do not know the gaps that we have because the province hasn't released the reference material or the curriculum to be used for that particular training standard at this time. What I can tell you is that this fire department is very diligent in its pursuit of water and ice rescue training. I have attended that training. I do not attend all training, but I make it a point to attend the water and ice rescue training because my experience in the fire service is that is the most dangerous function that firefighters in this province perform, aside from entering a burning building. That's how firefighters have died in this province. So they are very diligent. I am very diligent, and we are on the side of caution 100% of the time.
Oh, that's good to hear that our firefighters are trained to engage in these dangerous situations. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Cleared up a few of my questions already, so thanks to Council for those questions. One that might just be splitting hairs, but it caught my attention when I was looking too. Can you tell me, is there a difference between vehicle rescue and auto extrication in terms of certifying?
No, in Ontario, they're synonymous terms. Auto extrication is intended for automobiles, but quite frankly, we use those skills, everything from compact cars to combines and tractor trailers to electric vehicles. They're interchangeable skills. They work, quite frankly, many of them work as well on the farm as they do on the 401.
Right. And then looking ahead to that certification, the technical rescue, will there be any extra support, I guess, in terms of financial support because of our location along the 401 that you know of, or is there a request that can be put in for that training?
There will be no, my understanding at the present time is there will be no financial support with respect to training. The fire marshal is well aware that every fire chief in the province is asking for money for the additional training from firefighter level 1 right up to technical rescue. And it may be that there is a submission that he puts forward to cabinet at some point in the future. I'm not aware of that. I'm not privy to that. What I can tell you is that our calls for service on the 401 are reimbursed at a rate of approximately $500 per hour per truck. And between myself and finance staff, we chase down every dollar we can for the 401 calls, right? So, you know, there's no front end loading in terms of financing, but certainly on the Kings Highway, we're compensated for the service we provide.
Good to hear. Great. Thank you for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. All right, so we'll just go around one more time. I don't have any questions. Thank you for answering all those questions, Chief Bigrig. Councillor Goyda, are you in support, in favor?
I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spoulis
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well, so thank you very much. Next item 9.2 from our finance department. I trust we have our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Hassan, to speak about the reduction or refund of taxes, the first report 9.2.1.
Yes, Councillor Bulmer. So the purpose of this report is to authorize the treasurer to adjust the collector's roll in accordance with section 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act. And so the properties listed are listed in Schedule A to the report for council's information.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to put this on the table before council, Madam Clerk?
We do, thank you. That report FIN 2022-010 regarding the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes through sections 357 and 358 be received, and that council authorizes the treasurer through sections 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act to process the cancellation, reduction, or refund of property taxes for certain properties in the amount of $1,255 for the years 2019, 2020, and 2021 as outlined in Schedule A.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailey, did I see you put your hand up to move that?
You did.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder?
I will second.
Thank you, Councillor Goyda. All in favor? Councillor Goyda,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. Sorry, I guess if anybody had any questions, they would have interjected. All right, item 2.922 is the 2021 annual audit report, and we have back with us today Mr. Murray Short. I believe so. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Murray is just the attendee section, and I've just moved him over. He should be with us shortly.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Short. Welcome. It's nice to see you again. We haven't seen each other for a long time.
Yes, nice to see you as well.
I think I've been around long enough to remember when it was Robinson, Lawton, Brahman before it became RLB. Maybe
Yes.
we've both been around that long.
We have, yes. But yes, it's great to be back and to have this opportunity to present our audit results and the audited financial statements to council. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll turn the floor over to you then. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm just going to share my, Madam Clerk, would you like me to share my screen, or would you prefer to, and I can just point you to the pages that we'll be discussing?
I will enable screen sharing for you. Just one moment.
Great, thank you.
It should be good now.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks once again, Councillor Bulmer and members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to present the audited financial statements and our audit findings. As Councillor Bulmer alluded to, our firm has been auditors for the township in the past. In fact, I think it was close to a 60-year string where we were consecutively your auditors from the 1950s through to 2014. And after a brief hiatus, we're happy to be serving your municipality once again. I would like to thank the municipal finance staff for their support getting us through to this point. It's not all that common in the municipal auditing world to be presenting to council in March for December year-end financial statements. And I know that's been a request of council to expedite the process so that we're able to present these audited results as early in the year as we are able to today. So thank you to them for their diligence to get us to this point. I'm going to walk through the PowerPoint presentation first, and then maybe cover very quickly in the interest of time the financial statements themselves. Most of the highlights from the financial statements are included in the PowerPoint presentation, but I can go through the financial statements on a fairly high level afterwards as well if council would like. But starting with the PowerPoint presentation itself, and this is starting on page 263 of the council package for those following along at home. Just have a bit of an agenda here with the overview of our audit report and financial statements, and then next steps to kind of wrap things up. So first off, in terms of an overview of the audit process, our final materiality for the audit was $210,000. That's a number that's based on the overall assets of the township. Ultimately, the accumulation of any misstatements that aren't recorded in these financial statements could conceivably or conceptually add up to that amount, and we could still sign off on our audit report. In practice, we do bring any significant adjusting entries to the attention of management, and I can report that there were no unadjusted entries, so we're not aware of any discrepancies between the actual results and what's presented in the financial statement. So in practice, we use much lower thresholds for our testing and analysis to arrive at these audited financial statements. We did provide a pre-audit communication letter to council in December, and there were no significant changes in the assessment of our risks of the audit, our planned procedures, or any of the matters discussed in that letter. So felt it was important to communicate that, and also to communicate that there were no significant internal control deficiencies that arose through the course of our audit process. The management letter itself in draft is included in the council package on pages 242 and 243. Just for reference, it is standard wording on those 2 pages. If we had any significant recommendations to make, they would be appended to that letter on subsequent pages. We had no such recommendations. So we're very happy with the audit process, and again, the diligence of staff to get us to this point. We are not aware of any independence issues with respect to our firm and your municipality. If we had any vested interest in terms of roles with the municipality, financial oversight, or anything within our firm or audit team, that would not allow us to perform an unbiased audit, but we are not aware of any such issues. And so we are able to then provide our audit report in an unbiased manner. We did have one adjusting entry that we identified in our audit. There was one further entry which we recorded, which was just the municipal staff bringing to our attention changes that they had made. Because of the timeline of our audit being so close to the year end, it's not uncommon that clients will bring to us some changes to the preliminary numbers provided. So that wasn't something that we uncovered in the course of our audit. The one entry we did make was just transferring the prior year surplus into the reserves, as has been council's request and recommendation in prior years. And as I mentioned, no unadjusted differences arising from our audit. So there's nothing that we're aware of that was not recorded in these financial statements. And so again, a very clean audit process. The audit report itself is found in the council package on pages 246 and 247. It is the standard clean audit opinion. Most importantly is the second paragraph under the opinion heading right at the top of the report on page 246, which is where we comment that the financial statements are presented in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's the clean audit opinion that you are looking for from us, and we've satisfied ourselves that that is the case. In terms of the financial statements themselves, the statement of financial position is found on page 248 of the council package. It highlights the assets, liabilities, and ultimately the accumulated surplus for the township at the year-end date of December 31st, 2021, as well as the prior year end of December 31st, 2020. It's more familiar term would be the balance sheet for those of you who have businesses or other organizations. It's showing those balances at the year-end date. Some of the key areas include cash and cash equivalents, taxes receivable, tangible capital assets, and ultimately the accumulated surplus itself. And just for a few highlights here, you can see the cash balance has increased from 5.7 million to 6.8 million at the end of the 2021 year. That has arisen due to increases in reserves and reserve funds, a general fund surplus on the year of about 500,000, and then other changes. You can see some of your receivables have decreased and so on that result in changes in your cash flows. So overall positive cash increase in the year up to that 6.8 million. Portfolio investments increased just because of some investment income. Taxes receivable, you can see, are down by about $330,000. That's pretty consistent with what we're seeing in other municipalities. 2020 taxes receivable tended to creep up. Because of COVID, a lot of municipalities allowed some of the ratepayers to pay their taxes a little more slowly or defer paying taxes, didn't charge penalties and interest on them. And in some cases, just people weren't able to because of financial challenges that they were facing. And so it was pretty consistent that we saw taxes receivable increasing in 2020 and have been coming back down in 2021. And you can see that was the case here. A couple of other things to point out: deferred revenue about halfway down the last liability line. Those are your primarily your obligatory reserve funds, development charges, gas tax, recreational land. Those have increased by nearly $1 million. That is contributing to the increase in your cash as well. And so overall net financial assets, you can see, have increased by about $350,000. So the net of your financial assets minus your liabilities has increased. In other words, the liquidity of the municipalities increased in the year. Just below that, down near the bottom of the page, we have the tangible capital assets, and you can see they've increased by about $1.25 million. Municipalities invested fairly significantly in new capital asset additions the last couple of years. In the 2021 year, it was $3 million of additions versus amortization about 1.5. And so that has led to that increase and an overall increase in the accumulated surplus on the year up to 27.6 million. So just a few highlights in terms of graphs. This cash equivalents graph just shows the cash position relative to the cash outflows on the year. We were asked a question or sent some questions from council in previewing the package prior to, and so I will comment that the 2018 number is coded correctly. The reason that the green bar is showing more prominently than the yellow bar is because your cash equivalents were below the annual cash outflows on the year. So your cash position dipped fairly significantly in 2018 and then has increased since. So your annual cash outflows are shown above the green because they were higher than the cash position at the end of the year. In 2017 and then 2019 to 2021, your cash position has been higher than your annual cash outflows. In other words, you have more cash on hand at the end of the year than you would have needed to cover your cash expenditures in the year in 4 of the 5 years. The cash position has improved. You can see it's up to 111.3%. That would suggest that you can operate for more than a year on the cash you have on hand. That may raise some eyebrows, but obviously a fair amount of that is money that you have invested in reserves and reserve funds that is deliberately and purposefully set aside by council to cover future expenditures. So that's why the municipality and most municipalities do tend to have approximately a full year's worth of cash expenditures sitting in cash. The blue line you can see here is the average of our other clients. Your cash position is somewhat higher, but it's in the same ballpark, but somewhat higher than the average of our other municipal clients. So a strong financial position to be in. The next slide shows taxes receivable. And I'm pleased to comment that the Township of Puslinch is in a really kind of enviable position in terms of your taxes receivable. Other than 2020, which, as I mentioned, your tax receivable did creep up somewhat. It's kind of hovered around the 5% mark of the total taxes that you've collected on behalf of the municipality as well as the county and school board. So 5% of your total taxes levied in the year is sitting in receivables at the end of the year. That's really quite low. It's lower than the average for other municipal clients. And it's well within the low range that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing would consider to be low risk. So a really strong taxes receivable position. The municipality is doing a good job on collecting on those tax arrears. Tangible capital assets just shows your capital asset additions as a percentage of total tax revenue. We compare it to total tax revenue to try and normalize for the size of municipalities. We do audit a number of municipalities in Wellington and Dufferin counties, and they vary quite significantly in size. I would comment, although it looks like the Township of Puslinch isn't spending as much relative to other municipalities as a percentage of its tax revenues, my caution would be that in some ways it's not really a fair comparison. Some of our municipalities have comprehensive water and sewer infrastructure that they would have to spend more significantly on. Other things along those lines that would force them to have higher expenditures. And really the fairer comparison is comparing what you've spent versus what would be in your asset management plan. That's the realm of engineers, and I won't kind of comment on that point. Engineers look forward as to what you need going forward. Accountants look back as to what's happened in the past. So this is just for information purposes, but I would caution against drawing too much of an inference from this graph. What I think is maybe adds a little more value is this graph here, tangible capital assets versus budget and versus amortization. Comparing the blue bars in each year to the yellow bars is what you've actually spent on capital asset additions in terms of roads and vehicles and those sorts of things versus your amortization of those assets from the past. What we like to see as auditors is that the blue line more often than not is higher than the yellow line in each year. And you can see that that is the case in 4 of the 5 past years. That would be an indication to us anyways that the municipality is spending significantly on capital assets, renewing its infrastructure, replacing its outdated assets. And so I think that is a positive comment to make. The green line in each case is the budgeted additions. It's not uncommon that municipalities spend less than what they budgeted because projects that carry kind of beyond 1 year into a subsequent year, projects that are held up for whatever reason. And so it's not uncommon that we would see this. And in fact, because of the way your budgeting process works, there are likely to be expenditures that are budgeted in 1 year that are also budgeted in the next year because they weren't spent in the first year. So the green line is probably overstated for some duplication. More importantly, as I said, is comparing the blue to the yellow. And in this case, your municipality has been spending fairly significantly on capital asset additions, particularly in the last couple of years. This graph just shows the funding of capital assets. The purple would be capital grants. The municipality has received and spent some capital grants. I think most of this would be coming from some of the infrastructure funding that's available. The green, the lighter green color is obligatory reserve funds. That's your development charges, gas tax funding, recreational land. And so some infrastructure and capital asset additions are funded out of that. But you can see in the last couple of years, more of the capital asset additions have been funded out of reserves and reserve funds. Those are the discretionary reserves and reserve funds as opposed to the obligatory ones being your DCs, gas tax, and so on. Just provided for information purposes. You have not had to in recent years spend as much from tax levies on capital assets, which is good. You have those funds set aside in reserves and reserve funds. We'll talk about the status of those shortly. So the next statement is the statement of operations. It shows the revenues and expenses for the year. Some of the things to consider: your budget versus actuals, expenditures by department that are kind of provided in more detail in one of the schedules to the financial statements, the annual surplus and the overall accumulated surplus. So just to kind of point out a few highlights here, taxation revenue, you can see a modest increase from 4.58 or 4.59 million to 4.62. More variability as we would expect to see in the other revenue lines. So fees and user charges up fairly substantially, largely because of legal and planning recoveries, motor vehicle emergency responses, which the chief was referring to in his presentation. Government transfers are the grants from other levels of government. Those will vary from year to year based on kind of the programs that you've applied to and been successful in receiving, and how much you spent from those. And so that number is down slightly. And then other income is up largely because of licenses and permits and your aggregate levy being up in 2021 versus 2020. So total revenues up to 8.38 million from 8.09. On the expense side, you can see expenses are also up somewhat, and we'll get to the schedules there. Largely some staffing in the general government and planning and development. The planning and development was a new staff role, offset by a reduction in some of the consulting costs because having staff meant you needed to outsource less work. In the general government staffing, the addition of the clerk's position was the primary reason for that increase. The annual surplus at over the year about 1.6 million, just down from almost 1.7 million the year before. So pretty consistent surpluses. I will comment that that includes increases in your reserves, an increase in your investment in tangible capital assets. Again, when you spend more on tangible capital assets, your annual surplus tends to increase. Your accumulated surplus at the end of the year tends to increase because you're taking revenues and spending them on assets that are contributing to that overall surplus. So we do have some graphs here as well. Expenditures by department. You can see a breakout, not surprisingly, transportation services being the most significant expenditure for your municipality, and consistent with most of our municipalities, the roads and work and staffing related to that being the most significant in most municipalities in this area. And this just shows the same information in a graph with the 5 past years for comparison. Another question that was circulated by council was whether this split was consistent with other municipalities. I know we did have a question from municipal staff during the year about the general government expenditures as a percentage of the total. It is quite consistent. Some of our municipalities spend a little less on a percentage basis on general government than this, but that's again something I would caution against drawing too much inference from. For municipalities that have environmental services, water and sewer and those sorts of things, that would be a significant percentage of their expenditures, which would reduce other departments' expenditures as a percentage of the total correspondingly. The 23% for general government is not out of line with our municipalities that don't have significant environmental services in particular. Most of these are pretty consistent with what we'd expect to see. So the statement of changes in net financial assets shows the change basically in the liquidity of the municipality. So ignoring or removing the activity of non-financial assets, such as your tangible capital assets in particular. I won't go into this in a great amount of detail, but the top line here is the annual surplus. The middle section is where we back out that tangible capital asset activity And the net of those two is the increase or decrease in your net financial assets. Again, a bit of an increase. Most of the cash increase coming from an increase in your obligatory reserve funds, which are a liability. So this number is not as pronounced as the increase in your cash position, but still an increase overall in the liquidity of the municipality at the end of the year. And speaking of cash flows, the last primary statement of the financial statements is the statement of cash flows showing the change in cash equivalents through the year, and splitting those out between operating and capital sources. And I'll just point out, without getting into all the detail here, this approximately middle line here, $4 million of positive cash flows from the operations of the municipality. From that then is where you're spending money on capital asset purchases in particular, which, as I mentioned, were about $3 million. The net change in your cash then being $1.1 million positive cash inflows, increasing your cash to about 9.3 million from 8.1. And again, just to highlight the point that most of that increase is from an increase in your reserves and reserve funds. So it's not that the municipality is sitting on tons of operating cash. It's an increase in those reserves and reserve funds to cover future expenditures. Schedule of accumulated surplus is on page 261. It's schedule 2 of the financial statements. It breaks out the $27.6 million overall accumulated surplus for the municipality into various components. And so just to highlight those, 21.2, or the vast majority of the total, is your investment in capital assets. That's the most significant component of your accumulated surplus. Down at the bottom, we have the reserves. And as I mentioned, reserves themselves are up by about 150,000, up to almost 5.9 million. In the middle here, we have other smaller amounts. The general surplus this year, 569,000, up from 379 before. There's separate components of your equity for the Barbers Beach street lighting area and Cambridge Fire, as well as a negative equity amount for the unfunded post-employment benefits. So there's a bit of a liability to the municipality to cover post-employment benefits for employees once they've left the municipality, and that is valued based on an actuarial assessment at 82,000. And those combined make up the overall accumulated surplus for the municipality of 27.6 million. The deferred revenue note is note number 6 to the financial statements. It is on page 255 of the council package. It shows primarily the obligatory reserve funds, as I mentioned. Development charges, gas tax, and recreational land are the 3 biggest components of that. Those are recorded as deferred revenue because they're monies that are committed to be spent for specific purposes and will be deferred and then recognized as revenue when those expenditures occur. So just showing the components of that, you can see in total $2.5 million at the start of the year or the end of the 2020 year, up to $3.5 million. So almost a full $1 million increase coming primarily from these top 3 lines. You can see that your development charges, gas tax, and recreational land reserve funds all increased fairly substantially. The contributions received being well in excess of what you spent out of those reserve funds at the end of the year. That, again, contributing to the increase in your cash position. So in terms of comparison to our other municipalities, and again, I'll say take this with a grain of salt. It's provided for information purposes, but it is positive to note that your reserves and reserve funds are in excess of the average of our other municipal clients at the end of 2021. Very comparable at the end of 2020, as you can see. This balance, again, compared to tax revenue to try and normalize for the size of the municipality, it's moving in the right direction. It's kind of positive that it's been increasing. Again, I would caution that the reserves and reserve funds are for specific purposes, and I'm not really prepared to comment on what your capital asset needs would be, that these would be funding to be able to say that these are sufficient or that our other municipal clients' reserves and reserve funds are sufficient. and thus which one's in a better shape. But it is positive to see the reserves and reserve funds, despite the expenditures you've made in the last couple of years, have been growing relative to the size of our other municipal clients. In terms of next steps, we will kind of follow up with any changes to the representations given throughout the audit process to today's date. Today's the date we would anticipate signing off on our audit report, subject to review and approval by council. Assuming that there's been no changes, no subsequent events that we need to be aware of, then we are able to provide our audited financial statements once we've received the signed representation letter after council approval. The financial information returns being prepared to be submitted to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs by township staff. We do prepare that for most of our municipal clients, but township staff prepares it in your case. The deadline for that is May 31st, so lots of time to get that submitted, but we're with this approval of these financial statements, then the staff will be in a position to be able to submit that to the ministry. And that is the presentation. I've covered off most of the financial statements and I've taken up probably more time than I was allotted, but I'm glad to walk through the financial statements or answer any questions the council may have at this point. Maybe I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that presentation.
Sure.
And it really demonstrates the good work that our Chief Financial Officer has been doing with her staff and all of the staff in keeping things on the straight and narrow here. So I appreciate that. I trust we have a motion to put this on the table in front of council, Madam Clerk, and then we'll maybe have some questions from council for you, Mr. Short. And don't worry about the timing. I probably held up things more than you did today, so it's all good.
Great.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. That report FIN 2022-012 regarding the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021 be received, and that council receives a presentation by Martin Short of RLB LLP regarding the 2021 Township of Puslinch financial statements, and that council approves the following documents from RLB LLP. A, the audit report to the members of council dated March 23rd, 2022, and B, financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021.
Just if I could, Madam Chair, could we clarify that it was Murray Short, not Martin Short, that presented? I'd be a little concerned if it was Martin Short that had done our
Oh,
audit
I'm
report.
sorry. If I said Martin Short, I'm very sorry. It does say Murray Short.
Okay.
I apologize if I said that.
I get that all the time, Councilor Bomer, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do I have a mover for this, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councilor Spoulis. Seconder?
Yeah, I can move.
Oh, was that Councilor Bailey? Thank you. All right. It's on the table for discussion. Any questions, Councilor Goyda?
Any questions that I had have been answered in that presentation. And I did have some questions about the surplus moving forward, but I believe we're getting a report on that later in the year. So that's great. I just wanted to say thanks for the report and the presentation. It was very professional and very thorough. And I would also just like to reiterate Councillor Balmer's comments and thanks and gratitude to the whole finance team for being so thorough, which allowed this audit to take place quickly and efficiently. And it's very good to see that the township is in such a strong financial position. So thank you again to all for the hard work.
Thank you. Councilor Spoulis?
I don't have any questions. As Councilor Goyda said, all the questions I had were answered during the presentation. A very good presentation, really appreciated, very lucid, and understood everything very clearly. And again, I'd like to re-echo Councilor Bomer's or Councilor Goyda's appreciation of our financial staff for keeping us on a good financial path for looking into the future.
Thank you. And Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you. I echo those comments. I appreciate the presentation. It was nice and clearly presented. And it's nice to see, us in such a good position. So thanks to all involved.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Short, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make before we consider the motion?
No, just thanks once again to the staff at the township. To echo all the comments that have been made, it's a really smooth process. We've kind of done everything we've needed to do to get to this point, and more or less in record time for most of our municipal clients anyways. And considering that this was our first year back as your auditors after that hiatus that I mentioned, you know, first year doing an audit after several years or taking on a new client can be pretty onerous, and sometimes there's bits of lags as we kind of get up to speed, but we really didn't face anything from that standpoint, that it really was a smooth process right from day one. So thanks again to the staff of the township for that.
Very good, thank you. All right, looking for a vote. Councillor Goida.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Sapoulis
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well, so that's carried. Thank you very much. I guess we're on to item 9.3 from the Administration Department. I believe 9.3.1 is the draft location filming policy. Maybe Madam or Mr. CAO, do you have anything you'd like to, any comments or background you'd like to provide on this before we put it on the table?
Sure, I'll just give some introductory comments to it for the purpose of it. This is been prepared as a result of a number of recent requests that we've had for filming activities by various production companies within the township. The township has had a fee in the past for undertaking these and has issued permits, but there wasn't really a formalized policy in place. So what we wanted to do was make sure we have one in place. This was based on policies that are in place within the county and nearby the county. There's nothing in here that's different than other municipalities. It's fairly consistent. We want to make it as simple and straightforward and easy to use as possible. This is something that production companies ask for when they come into a municipality to do some filming work. And this is definitely something that can help as an economic development initiative. When they know you have a policy in place, they know that you're receptive to filming in there, and that can be a benefit to the community in terms of economic development, plus just awareness of the municipality as well. So it's a good thing. So happy to answer any specific questions. We've received a few comments, asking us to just expand a little bit or clarify a couple of references in here. So we're happy to do that and bring forward a final version, but happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have a motion to put this on the table?
Yes, we do. The recommendation in the report is either to adopt the policy as presented or amended. So at this point, if to get it on the table, if it could just be received for information pending council discussion.
Okay. Do I have a mover to put this on the table for council discussion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Spoulis. Seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Goida. All right, so it's on the table for discussion. I guess we'll start with some questions. And Councillor Goida?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a couple of quick questions. The policy, it outlines that all filming except for newscasts, this policy would apply to. So any other commercial filming would have a fee. I just wanted to suggest, or maybe I guess ask, if videography related to weddings and family photos could also be excluded from this. I think that would be generally a much smaller scale commercial filming project, but I think that the fee for this type of job would be fairly cost prohibitive to the family or the bride and groom that would be contracting that out. So I was wondering if it's reasonable to exclude that.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Yes, we would consider that much along like a media report type of thing. So it could be an exclusion for that for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely incorporate that.
Okay, and then the only other real comment that I had was it says in here that the applicant must notify in writing any resident within 100-meter radius. I'm just wondering if that language could be updated to include business owners and property owners in the notification. so that any impacts on them who may not necessarily be the resident, they could also express any feedback on the application as well.
Absolutely. Good point. Yep. We'll incorporate that.
Yeah, and other than that, I think the policy looks good, and I think it would be really kind of great and interesting to see some more filmmaking come to Puslinch. So thank you for putting that together.
Thank you, Councillor Goiter. Councillor Sapoulis?
No, I'm good. It's a very comprehensive policy. The only thing is I look forward to Council Boomer being in another starting role.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. This kind of piggybacks on Councillor Goyda's question, or my question was what constitutes a filming company? So I noticed in the permit application, it requests the total number of cast and crew. So is there sort of a threshold where if you're under 20, you don't need the permit? If you're over, like, is there a threshold we're looking at?
The current wording is what's in every other policy that we've looked at. So I'll see if we can find some type of threshold or clarify that definition a little bit, but for sure we could do that.
Yeah, I just have in mind a cousin I had, and I remember him going around and doing some filming, but there was, 5 or 6 of them. So you'd think the disruption wouldn't be the same, and maybe they don't need quite the whole permit application.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we can clarify that.
That fit in. You mentioned the economic development benefit, and I know that's not really part of the policy, but I'd like to kind of hear a little more about that. So just where that would fit in and how that could benefit Puslinch, just more for interest. But I didn't know if there was sort of an economic development plan that this is fitting into. I don't know if you had a comment on that.
This isn't anything formal as part of an economic development plan. It's just that if what we're finding is that if a municipality has this policy in place already, that tends to be where production companies will go look to locate their filming operations. And then that can have economic development spin-offs for the community in terms of, supplies and materials that they might purchase in the area and those types of things, like just spin-off from local business taking place there.
I see. Okay, that clarifies that part for me. Okay. And then I'm sorry, I didn't look into this any further. Is there a county bylaw that we're coordinating this with, or like how are they, if it's on a county road, does that make a difference if it's on a township road?
Yeah, there is no county policy in this that I'm aware of or that I could find. What we do reference in our policy here is that we can give permissions for work along or filming along township roads, but if they select a road where they want to film a specific scene, they need to make sure that they have the permission of the road authority. So what's incorporated in this policy is a link to a map showing the current road network within the municipality, so that if you're here, you need to get county authority, and if you're here, you need to get provincial authority, or this is township authority. So it does clarify that.
Okay. Great. My other comment, I'd appreciate Schedule A. I think it's, clear, friendly, easy to read. So I think that's great. Tiny little typo. I'm thinking I've got page 2. Say that it's not overly restrictive or cumbersome. So instead of being overly restrictive.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Bailey, you broke up a little bit there. I wonder if you could just email me that that section, and we'll make sure we get that corrected for the final version that we bring forward.
Yep, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Yeah, I'd like to echo some of those concerns. Particularly the concept we heard about thresholds. It was one I struggled with. I didn't know how to put it, but both Councillor Bailey and Councillor Goyda have captured that fairly well, since there's been more than one occasion where I've had somebody from Equine Guelph come out making using our property for a small informational video on hay or horse care or something, and it's one, maybe 2 people, and I don't think anybody even knew they were here, and I don't think that's what this is intended to deal with. I think we're looking at the intent here is to capture those things with tents and lights and production and traffic impacts, and possibly only on public property. But it'd be great if we can clarify all that so that it isn't, people don't believe it's going to apply to their place. So I guess generally I also support the direction of this, but I did have 3 areas of concern that I wanted to just make sure I think we can neaten up the language a little bit. Number 1 was where this actually applies. Some of the language suggests it's, because it's an internal policy, it's understood to apply only to township property, but some of the language, some of the clauses talk about council being notified of any filming that takes place anywhere in the township. So perhaps just sort of tightening up the language so it's clear when anybody reads it, it's really only talking about township property. I guess the second one would be who we're intended to protect. In some clauses, we talk about needing the majority support from adjacent property owners, and yet the suggestion is we'll poll the residents and to determine if the property owners are in favor. And I think to clarify who it is we're actually going to be asking to support it, whether it's the property owners or the residents, do we worry about absentee landlords or vacant landowners, just to help staff understand who we're working for here. And I guess the last one would be about consistency of for different users. I noted in here that it talks about there be no filming after 11 p.m. But I struggle to understand if this is taking place inside the community center, and we have weddings that go till well after 11 p.m. Is it fair to restrict a small filming that's taking place entirely inside to 11 p.m.? I just couldn't get my head around that. Perhaps staff can work that out in the next draft, because obviously there's a difference between whether it's entirely contained inside or if it's outside next to somebody's house. And the last piece, I guess, was about the idea of whether it was socially sensitive or distasteful to the general public. I was wrestling with how we're going to determine those things. I didn't see any requirement for the applicant to provide a full script of what they're doing, or provide edits if they change anything, or if it's just the parts that are filmed here would be objectionable, or if it's any part of the whole production is objectionable. And I didn't know if this was a test that we apply to any renter of our facilities. So I struggled with how this was going to work. I understand the intent here, but at the same time, I can think of several industries that are based here who might want to make a documentary here and use our facilities that some people might object to. And I don't know if it would be appropriate to say they couldn't make a documentary here about their business that's located here because it might be objectionable to some people. So those would be my comments as staff prepares the next draft. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will for sure note those, and we'll highlight what we do to address those in the future draft that we bring back to council.
Super. So Madam Clerk, I think we had a second resolution. Oh, I guess we'll finish with the first one. We'll go around the table to receive the report first, and then we'll take the second motion as to what we're going to do with it. So Councillor Goyette, are you in support of receiving the report?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Sapoulis?
In favor.
And Councillor Bailey?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I looked to my left, Councillor Bailey, when I spoke to you, because that's usually where you sit. I can't, it's a habit. It didn't do it long in person. I just noticed I looked to my left when I went to speak to you. Oh, okay. Madam Clerk, I think you had another resolution related to this matter.
Yes, so just based on the comments, it looks like we will be bringing a second draft back to council. So the resolution that I have prepared is that council directs staff to incorporate council's comments into the next draft of the report and report back to council at a future meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for that?
Move.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Goyette. All in favor, Councillor Goyette.
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis.
In favor.
And Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Thank you. I'm also in favor, so that's passed as well. And our next item. Okay, 9.3.2. The report on the delegated powers to the CAO during the emergency, as part of emergency management. Mr. CAO, would you like to speak to this first?
Sure. So the purpose of this report, it's a requirement that the CAO report back to council once an emergency declaration has been concluded, which we're in that situation now, just to basically report back and summarize to council what actions or decisions were made with that delegated authority. So it's basically just to give council a summary and a level of comfort that no large contracts were awarded without your knowledge, or large purchases made, or amendments to significant items, those types of things. So it's basically just a summary. This report provides that, gives you some timelines of the many things that we went through over the last couple of years here, and just brings you up to date as to where we are and what was done, and gives you that assurance that we didn't award any large contracts that you're not aware of or anything like that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have a resolution to receive this?
That report ADM 2022-016 entitled Delegated Emergency Powers to the Chief Administrative Officer Summary Report be received for information.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for that, please?
Can move.
What was that?
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey, and seconded.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. Councillor Goyda, any questions?
No questions. I just wanted to, say when you look at this list, it's certainly quite a roller coaster of opening and closing and modifying and reopening and reclosing. And it's been quite a lot, I'm sure, for our CIO and for all of staff to adapt to. And I think that, taking that new buzzword pivot really was put in place very quickly and effectively throughout the entire time. So I just wanted to take a minute and just, reiterate that throughout all of that, there was always excellent communication with council. There was excellent collaboration with the county as a whole. I did have the opportunity to sit in on a couple of those meetings with the other municipalities and mayors. There's been a great team of staff that have come together and just continually stepped up and continue to shine and grow. And it's a really great team. And throughout all of that, even though the municipal office has been closed, the services have continued. So I think those things deserve a little bit of special mention. And all that being said, I'm glad we're looking at having the municipal office reopened again soon. And it will be definitely refreshing to see everybody and speak to each other face to face once again. So thank you for putting this report together.
Thank you. Councillor Sapoulis?
Yes, I have no questions. I was just reiterate what Councillor Goyda said, thanking staff for taking us through these past 2 years of turmoil and rolling with the punches, so to speak. Thank you, staff.
Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. No questions in the report. Yeah, it's in there, but in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I'm sorry you cut out there. Was there a question there, or just a thank you?
Just a thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And yes, it was a walk down memory lane, I guess you could say. And it was good to pull it all together. As we got the notices, I was keeping those emails in a separate mailbox on my computer, and I hadn't looked at that for a while. And boy, it's amazing how many things that the different changes that came in and came out, and everybody adapted. So thank you very much. All right, I guess all in favor. Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis.
In favor.
And Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
Thank you. I'm in favor as well. That's carried then.
Thank you very much. It was definitely a significant team effort, and everyone worked together very well. So credit to the team for that. Thank you.
Item 9.3.3 from the REC committee regarding external advertising. Do I have a motion to put that on the, oh, I guess we'll have, who would be presenting that today? Would that be? just to
We're taking
speak to
care
it
of that,
briefly?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bunn. The
Thank
floor is
you.
yours.
Thank you very much. So I'll be presenting this report on behalf of the Recreation Committee. This report is highlighting a proposal for external advertisements that is in line with the recent policy, the Advertising, Communication and Media Relations policy that Council has passed. As Council may recall, last year, the Rec Committee had submitted their goals and objectives, which included reaching out to other advertising groups to promote our facilities. The committee has then done some research and evaluated Guelph Today as being an ideal source to promote that advertisement. So this report highlights a request from the committee to proceed with that set of advertisements. I'm happy to take any questions the committee or council may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bunn. I should identify Mr. Bunn as a deputy clerk as well, so appreciate that update. Madam Clerk, do we have a motion to put this on the table?
Yes, the motion based on the recommendation in the report is that the report be received by council and that council either approve or deny the external advertisement proposal as presented.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a mover for that?
I'll move.
And a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. And perhaps you could indicate as we go around, if you have any questions at the end, you could just indicate if you want to support or amend as well. Thank you. Councillor Goyda?
Sorry. No, I don't have any questions. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Bunn has relayed. There's been a lot of work by specifically the subcommittee and the REC committee to put this proposal together. And the intent here is to promote our facilities, and Guelph Today was chosen because it's primarily digital and its reach is far. There was some statistics there on its readership, and they really do have the resources to help put the resources together to post on their page. So that's why this is coming. It's a big portion of the advertising that the Rec Committee is looking at doing. So, and it's not a local publication, but it is intentionally done that way so that we can reach outside the borders of Puslinch. And also, if council had any ideas or comments on what they'd like to see put into this advertising, I'm happy to take that back to the Rec Committee as well.
Super, thank you. Councillor Sapoulis? Oh, I'm sorry, before we go to Councillor Sapoulis, there was that other question in the motion. Would you like it to, I forget what the word, we had a choice between two words. Madam Clerk, can you remind us you wanted to?
Mr. Chair, it was whether or not the proposal will be approved, denied, or as you said, potentially amended as presented.
So Councillor Goyda, would you like it approved, denied, or potentially amended?
I would like to see it approved.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Sapoulis?
Yeah, I would approve this this report. I think the Rec Committee has done an excellent job. They're getting a big bang for the buck. I was really surprised at the reach out that Guelph Today has and the data they have to support the advertising program that they're proposing. So good job, Rec Committee, and thank you, Councillor Goyda, for moving this along.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, before I support, I just had a few questions. I'm wondering if there's going to be a way to measure sort of before and after to know whether this is a benefit and worth the value. So I didn't know how we were going to do that coming out of a pandemic. So that was sort of my first question, is just the how to measure whether this is going to work or not. in light of how many people this could reach, I'm just a little concerned with, and I'm just coming at this from a Badenoch Community Center advertising perspective. We've had a lot of discussions about keeping our facility, for local Puslinch folks. So if we're reaching this many people out of the township, I'm just concerned that, when Puslinch residents want to rent it, it won't be available. So I didn't know how that was being dealt with. I know in the past there's been resident versus non-resident rates. I don't know if the discussions come up resident, non-resident booking priorities. Anyway, that was just a question that had come up. And then my third question was just, and maybe it's in the detail, I didn't see it, but are we able to just advertise when needed? Or is it sort of a blanket advertisement? So the example is, we're noticing I think the example was the rink. The rink on Sundays is low. So, okay, let's throw out an advertisement saying, hey, come and use the rink. So can we advertise this when needed, or just as a general advertisement? So sorry, I don't know, Mr. Bunn, if you have any of those answers, or Councillor Goyda, but those were my questions.
Councillor Goyda, I don't know if you wanted to speak first.
I can try. In terms of when the ads can be posted, I do believe that it is entirely up to us when we want to put those advertisements out and what we want to advertise. And I think that just like what you said, Councillor Bailey, the intention of those advertisements is to purposely pick low use either times or days and advertise specifically for those, so that we can get some additional revenue for things and at times where we wouldn't otherwise. So an example of that would be, for instance, the ice pad in the summertime on a Sunday when it's not being used by anything else. So maybe we could, work with Guelph Today, and they'll design that advertising for us to come up with something that is engaging and tries to encourage rental of that ice pad on a Sunday in the summer. So it from what I understand, it can be when we want and what we want. I don't know if Mr. Bunn has any additional insight on that.
Mr. Chair, I don't have additional insight on that, and I can defer to our clerk. What I can say about the first question in terms of data and the analytics part to see the effectiveness, we can work with Guelph Today to see if we can get what that analytics looks like in terms of the reach for the posts that we put up. And I'm sure the Recreation Committee would also be very interested in having that too. So that's one thing that we'll pull. I think where you'll see difficulty is, and I think you've pointed to it quite well, Councillor Bailey, is that we are coming out of a pandemic year, and the level of interest in rentals will be very interesting to see how that goes. And I don't think having a benchmark would probably be the best at this point comparing to other years, but certainly we can look at what the reach would be and identify, the level of success we have at the end of the year. I think that's probably the only way, but I would open this up to our clerk to provide additional feedback.
Thank you. You covered it quite well, Jeff. I don't have anything else to add, but just with the exception that based on what Jeff has already said, coming out of a pandemic, we don't have a lot of great, this next year might be tough to use as kind of our benchmark, just because there might be an influx of rentals, particularly with residents versus non-residents. I don't know if this year will be a great indicator of what that'll look like in the long term. But I think just to your first question, Councillor Bailey, about whether or not we have the capacity at the facilities to manage and be able to balance between Puslinch residents and non-residents, I think that will be something that we can report on as well and bring that information back to the Rec Committee when they get their reports from finance, and certainly back to council to see what that looks like once this advertising has had some time to take effect.
Okay, great. I think collecting that data would be, yeah, really important, just so that we can look back and see, see how it's going. Thank you. I appreciate all those responses. It does satisfy me. I'm really glad to hear we can sort of post the ad when needed and tailor it to what the specific need is. So I'm in favor of this going ahead. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. So we have 3 people, everybody's on board for the approval. So I'm going to go around now, separate. Now the vote is separate from the language question there. So Councillor Gordon, are you in favor then?
Yes, I'm in favor.
And Councillor Spoulos
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey
In favor.
in
Yes.
favor as well. So
Yep.
I am as well. So that's carried. Thank you very much. I have a procedural question for the clerk and the CAO, or maybe it's not procedural. I've noticed a couple of times we have rec reports in the admin department as opposed to under the rec heading. How do you decide that?
That's a good point, Mr. Chair. We, because the committee responsibility is part of the administration department, we add our rec and heritage committee reports underneath administration rather than in the rec department, just simply because of whichever umbrella they happen to fall under the administration department umbrella.
Oh, thank you. That helps. Because the follow-up question is, how come the heritage doesn't have a heading on the agenda? But I wasn't going to bring that up today.
Oh.
Okay,
we
next.
can look at that, Mr. Chair, for sure.
It's okay. Planning, there's none. 9.5, there's none. 9.6 roads and parks, none. 9.7 recreation. We have a report with an update on the Morrison and the Passage Community Center grounds construction projects. Who would like to take this one on?
I can start off, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We just felt it was a good time to bring a report forward for council and the community so that they're aware. These are 2 projects we know that there's a lot of interest in, and we wanted to update you where things are at in terms of the RFPs that were issued, the work that is underway, and what the current schedules are based on the latest information that we have available. Just wanted to make sure that everyone has the latest information as well, and we're happy to answer any specific questions. This was a joint report that was prepared by myself, the Director of Finance and Director of Public Works, Parks and Recreation as well. And we'll do our best to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Madam Clerk, do we have a resolution for this?
Yes, that report REC 2022-005 entitled Postage Community Center Funded Projects Update. Oh, sorry, just one moment. Just want to make sure I have the right resolution here. Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. It's to receive it for information.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for that, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Spoulos. A seconder?
I'll second.
That was Councillor Goida. All right. Councillor Goida, any questions or?
Just 2 quick questions. In terms of the teams or the users that would be affected by the late night games and not having the lights available this season, I'm just wondering if that has already been communicated to those user groups and if they've expressed any concern with their abilities to change their schedules around. And if there is concern, if there's anything we can be doing to help maximize the use or availability during daylight hours.
I'll defer to Mr. Fowler or Mrs. Sand for that aspect.
To your question, Councillor Goida, at this time, we are anticipating that is correct, that the late night games will not be able to proceed for this 2022 season due to the fact that with the decommissioning of the lights and the demolition, we will be sending out an info pack to our services team that any potential renters or league members that are anticipating late night games will not be able to accommodate for the 2022 season. Any type of accommodations, whether it be weekend games or, you know, whatever schedule these teams can come up with to make up for the late night games, that'll have to be negotiated once rental times and are secured.
Okay. Okay, I was just, I really am not exactly sure how the normal proceeding of rentals go, but I was just wondering if it made sense to move up times of like an earlier rental so that, I don't know, so that there could be like 2 rentals that take place before it gets dark. I don't know, and maybe that's not a concern.
Yeah, my hope is that the leagues can cooperate with each other and then possibly utilize more of the PCC diamond for lighting, whether we extend the game times for that facility to compensate for the loss of Old Morrison for this year. Again, it's the early stages, and I'm sure the township will be willing to work out whatever we can for these teams.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And then the second question is just in regards to the PCC, the various components of the bigger project. I know that this report speaks to a report coming back so that council can look at the various components. I just wanted to make sure that, and I couldn't remember if the tennis courts were going to be included as one of those components.
To my knowledge, the tennis courts are going to be included. I will not guarantee until once I have a meeting with the consultants this Friday, that we will go over the scope of work, and the determination as far as budgetary will be determined then. So I can report back by next council for that answer.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Goida. Councillor Sapoulis.
Yeah, just to follow up on the tennis courts, I guess we've got received a number of grants, and can we add something in under those grants, like the tennis courts, for additional funding, or is it too late? We have already made an application and no more can be accepted.
We're going to have to take a close look at the wording that was in the approved funding application. I believe there is some flexibility in terms of some of the components that would be used in the tennis courts, but we will confirm all that and report all that back to council when we bring forward the various options with our consultants. But you know, if there's items in the funding application that were, you know, site work and grading and things like that, that's more generic type stuff that could be used in multiple locations on the site. But we'll finalize that information for all the council.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty, to be frank, I was pretty disappointed to see that the lights are not going to be available this summer. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a problem. I know just from my experience with my son on the Puslan Schminer ball squirt team, they tend to play a game, you know, from 6 to 8, and then the men's come in and they do 8:30, you know, to 10:30. There's 3 men's leagues. There's many other groups I'm not involved with, but I'm having trouble seeing how we're going to accommodate all of those people, because it's not just on them to reschedule their stuff. We need to take a little bit of responsibility here and be able to see how we can, you know, accommodate coming out of this pandemic. Everyone's gearing up and ready to go. So I didn't know if there were some sort of innovative ways where we can provide some lighting, whether it's, you know, you have road construction crews that have lighting so they can work through the night. Is there a way we could be bringing in some temporary lighting to satisfy a few games? Or is there a way we could be queuing, instead of being in the queue for hydro, could we be scheduling with hydro in August, end of August, and still, completing the project before winter. I guess I'm just looking for other options instead of seeing, we can't do it.
We're doing what we can and working with our consultant, and if there is options that we can use to have, lighting for parts of the season, then, that's definitely something that we'll look at. We'd have to look at what costs might be associated with that too, and what the impacts of that might be. We're doing our best with what we're able to work with, and we'll do what we can to try and accommodate as much as we can. Once we have a little bit more information, once we meet with the consultants again and get the latest updates, then we'll try and bring some more information back. But we do understand that that's the desire of the community, and we'll see what we can do to try and balance that if there is any possible way to do that. We'll do our best is what I'll say.
Yeah, I would say instead of a desire, it's a need. Is there an option to delay the project a little bit? Is that part of the conversation?
Mean like don't do anything until ball season is over? Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Yeah.
We can look at that as well as a potential option, but then we'd have to see how that fits, what dominoes that knocks over as well, just in terms of product availability and approvals and things. We'll look at that too and see if that's something that's worth pursuing too.
I appreciate that. I know you're trying, and you'll try to do what you can to make it work, but it's thanks for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. It's interesting. It wasn't that many years ago when the recommendation was we didn't need to with lighting, and it appears that we do, or we wouldn't even be having these conversations today. The struggles we're facing if one of the two goes down. So interesting how things can change very quickly in the community. So, okay, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor? Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis?
In favor.
And Councillor Bailey?
In favor.
Thank you very much. All right, item 10, course. Item number 1, the McMillan Pit, CBM's McMillan Pit water quality monitoring. There's 2 documents associated with this. There's the annual monitoring report prepared by 8 Trees Incorporated on behalf of the licensee, and then a peer review of the 8 Trees report by Groundwater Environmental Management Services. So do we have a motion, Madam Clerk, to put this on the table?
Yes, we do. That council receive correspondence item 10.1, including the report and the peer review of 2021 McMillan Pit license number 5737 water quality analysis report prepared by 8 Trees Incorporated.
Thank you.
And Groundwater Environment Management Services peer review.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a mover for this?
I'll move.
Who?
Okay, I'll second then.
Okay, Councillor Goyda and Councillor Sapoulis. And so Councillor Goyda, any questions or comments?
No real questions, just that the groundwater environmental provided some comments, and it would be good to have those sent to 8 Trees for a response.
Okay, good idea. And Councillor Sapoulis, any questions or comments?
Yes, the GEM's review of 8 Trees report, I'd like to move that be sent to Groundwater Environmental for their comments.
I'm sorry, can you say that? Who do you want sent? Which one do you want sent to who?
GEM's review of the 8 Trees report.
Right.
I'd like that
to be sent to 8.
To Groundwater, who's the initiator of the 8 Trees report. In other words, 8 Trees is a sub to Groundwater.
I mean groundwater science or groundwater environmental
science, groundwater science. Sorry, I should have spelled yeah.
Okay, so So then I think, so what you're suggesting is that the GEMS review of the 8 trees report be sent to Mr. Pentney of Groundwater Science.
Yes, for the review and comments.
Okay, do you want the GEMS report to go back to 8 trees for comment?
Well, 8 trees, are they not a sub of groundwater science? And that's, and groundwater science would forward it to them.
Okay, I guess so. I didn't see the report. I didn't see, did I miss something? Is there a groundwater science report for the McMillan pit as well? I must have missed that. But you're right, the quality report is a subcomponent of the overall groundwater monitoring.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Councillor Bailey, do you have any questions or comments on that? Then we can.
No questions, but a similar, support GEMS questions is what I had. But I'm not clear who to send it to then. I assume
Madam
it was
Clerk,
8 trees.
maybe you could help us, or
So just looking at the report, it does appear that it's 8 Trees Incorporated that has prepared the initial report. And we have GEMS, Groundwater Environmental Management Services, that has prepared the peer review. And then I believe what Councillor Sapoulis is saying is 8 Trees Incorporated is a subsidiary of Groundwater Science. Is that correct?
That's what I was trying to understand. I believe that was the case, but I could be wrong.
I'm not seeing it.
Perhaps my motion should say to the pit owner, and I'll leave it at that. And let the pit owner pass it on to 8 Trees.
Yes, we could do the operator and 8 Trees Incorporated, given that they've prepared the report, and we could send GEM's report along to both of those agencies, if that makes sense.
Sure.
thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. So what you have that as a motion then?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
Okay, do I have a seconder for Councillor Sapoulis's motion?
I will.
Councillor Bailey, thank you. All in favor? Have you got that, Madam Clerk?
I do. I was just wondering if we are amending the original report or the original motion to receive, or are we doing a separate motion to send it along? And then in that case, we would have 2 motions to adopt. One to
Okay,
receive,
your
one to
preference,
send.
how would you like to proceed? Amend or do 2?
Amend would be a little simpler. We have Councillor Goida that's moved it. Councillor Sapoulis is that seconded it. So as long as that amendment is satisfactory.
I'm good with that.
I'm good as well.
Okay. And have you got the verbiage down as you'd like it then?
I do. I
Madam.
have the original that it's received and that council directs staff to forward the peer review to 8 Trees Incorporated and to the pit operator for their review and comment.
Thank you. So then we'll go back. Councillor Goida, all in favor?
In favor.
And Councillor Sapoulis
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
Yep, in favor.
I'm in favor as well. So thank you very much. That's carried. Item number 2 is the CBM Nybauer Pit groundwater monitoring report. The report prepared on behalf of the operator here is from Groundwater Science and peer review from Hardin Environmental. Do we have a motion to put this on the table, Madam Clerk?
The council received correspondence item 10.2 regarding the review of the 2021 Neubauer Pit License 625284 groundwater annual monitoring report and the peer review prepared by Hardin Environmental Services.
Thank you. Do a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. Seconder,
I can move it.
Councillor Bailey. Thank you.
Or second it.
Questions or comments, Councillor Goida?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Councillor Sapoulis?
No, that as long as our consultant's satisfied, I have no questions or comments.
And Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, sounds like there's no concerns, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, I largely satisfied. I was concerned when I saw some of the language around the monitoring wells and being some being plugged with routes, but I think the applicants or the operators consultant identified those as well. So I guess as long as we see those being addressed and not coming back, I think I'm okay with it as well for now, but anyhow, so I'll go around the table. All in favor? Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor?
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
All right, I'm in favor as well. So that's carried. The last one, CBM Puslinch Pit, formerly known as the Mast Pit when it was owned by Puslinch Quality Aggregates, next door to the Nybauer Pit. We have the 2021 annual groundwater monitoring report prepared by Groundwater Science and peer-reviewed by Hardin Environmental. Could I have a motion to put that on the table, please, Madam Clerk?
The council receive the correspondence item 10.3 regarding the review of the 2021 CBM Puslinch Pit License number 17600, groundwater annual monitoring report and peer review prepared by Hardin Environmental Services Limited for information.
Thank you very much. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Goida. There's a buzzer beater there again. Seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. Okay, Councillor Goida, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Councillor Sapoulis?
No, our consultant was satisfied, and I'm satisfied as well, and no questions.
Thank you. And Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, no questions.
Thank you. No questions as well or concerns, so I'll go around the table one more time. All in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor?
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well, so thank you. That's carried. 11, council reports. Any members of council? I guess I'll just start with Councillor Goida. Anything you'd like to update council on regarding your committee work?
No, I don't think I have anything today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Sapoulis, anything from the planning world or source water protection we need to be updated on?
Source water protection meetings next week, so I haven't got their package yet, so I'll see if anything's on there for us.
Super, thank you very much. And Councillor Bailey, anything in the safe communities world you'd like to bring us up to speed on?
We're just plugging along. There's constantly different presentations coming to the Wellington County group, and we're continuing to try to have one at each of our meetings. So it's just a lot of input right now. We have the Puslinch Safe Communities group does have their Facebook group now, so we're sharing things on there. Yeah, that's about it.
I understand there's some potential activities in the works that we might see as the temperature warms up as well. Possibly bike rodeos and things for the kids if things work out well.
Yes. So that's trying to get all the different parties involved, and like you say, weave a cloud and make it happen. So that's coming in the future. Well,
good luck. I have nothing to update from Heritage right now. We have a meeting coming up as well, as maybe there'll be more coming out of that. Mayor's updates. Well, I don't know if it was mentioned off the top. I will. I'm sitting in the mayor's chair, or the chair's chair today, because Mayor Seeley was tested positive for COVID and was feeling under the weather yesterday. So we wish him the best today and speedy recovery. Council member reports. I guess I did that already. No bylaws today. 13.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if we could just have a quick motion just to accept the mayor and council member updates for information.
All right, that'd be fine. Do you have a motion to accept or do I just make it up?
It's that we receive the mayor and council members updates for information.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Was that your hand, Councillor Bailey? I saw it go up there for moving it. Thank you. And the seconder?
I'll do it.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis. All in favor, Councillor Goida?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Sapoulis.
In favor.
And Councillor Bailey?
In favor.
Thank you so much. I'm in favor as well. Okay, now we're on to, there were no bylaws. We're on the, I guess we're down to the confirmatory bylaw. Madam Clerk, do we have a confirmatory bylaw prepared?
Yes, we do. The following bylaw will be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-012 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Whistland should its meeting held on the 23rd day of March 2022.
Thank you. I apologize before I ask for mover and seconder. It looks like I skipped over a couple of items there, announcements and new business, and also I think I missed the notice of motions. Anything before I carry on, did any member of council have anything under those 3 headings before I officially put this item on the table?
Can I just ask Councillor Sapoulis if there's any information on the trees, the Green Legacy tree program?
No, I have not heard anything at all. It's quiet. I guess they're waiting to see what happens. Right now, I haven't heard anything what they're planning to do, whether they're going to distribute it out as they did the last year or have a session in the community area barns.
Maybe I can also just share the Badna Community Center has sort of done their soft open. We're not doing a lot of advertising because we have a lot of local families that are trying to make up their bookings from 2 years ago. So we've, brought them all forward and we're doing a little bit of a soft open. And Florence Peer has retired from being the booking agent and the cleaner there. So that's been a very big change. And I've got Amy DeVries in the community is taking over that position. So we've got some new faces around there, and hopefully that'll just be a nice smooth opening.
Well, thank you for that. I apologize. I skipped over the announcements. I didn't mean to rush anybody. But thank you for that update on the Badna Community Center. That's the heart of Badna down there, and I'm glad that we still have community members willing to volunteer their time to make that available to the community. So thank you for that update. All right, so now I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for a confirmatory bylaw.
I'll move.
You can move.
Thank you, Councillor Spoulis. Seconded, I hear Councillor Bailey in there for seconding.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Thank you. I'm in favor as well, so that's carried. So our final would be the adjournment. And just before I ask the clerk to read that, I would like to thank Councillor Sapoulis. While I had several hours notification that I was going to be chairing this meeting, I apologize that you had less than several minutes notification that you would have to chair. And as I tuned in, was I finally able to join, I could tell you were doing a wonderful job. You stepped into it naturally and professionally. So I very much appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Just a copy would be helpful.
Madam Clerk, could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
The council hereby adjourns at 12:53 p.m.
Thank you very much. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
Okay, I'm going to give this one to Councillor Sapoulis. And seconder to Councillor Goida. All in favor? Councillor Goida,
In favor.
Councillor Sapoulis,
In favor.
and Councillor Bailey.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. Thank you very much. Very well behaved team today. I appreciate that. Makes it easier on those of us sitting in the chair. So, and thank you, staff. I'm sorry for the delay at the beginning. I'll
No
be
problem
more
at all.
prepared for tonight. So
Thanks very much.
take care.
Bye.